couple notes while you're marking these. This long mark from the part where we marked the tip, and then this 12-inch mark up on the leading edge. It's kind of a hard one to get to with like a ruler or something to get a straight line. So what I do is I put a piece of masking tape or a piece of painter's tape along that edge, put it down, and then mark on it. It doesn't give you a perfect line, but it gets you close, and then with a method we'll be using later, we'll make sure that all the blades are the same. So just run yourself a piece of tape down that line and then mark on it. That's what I do. Or use something that bends, a piece of cardboard or something like that, and make your marks. On this one, it's a lot shorter, so it's not so hard to do. You can just use a little notepad and put it from point A to point B, and then run your mark down there. Try to get them as consistent as possible. They are windmill blades, and preferably they should all be the same and be balanced. And I'll go over how to make sure they're the same here in a little bit, but try to get all your lines and all your cuts as accurate as possible on the front end. It'll save you a little bit of work on the back end. Okay, as you can see, the blades are starting to, you can see a form or a shape of the blade. This is the smaller PVC that I'm showing you here. You can see it from the top view. But we're going to cut these sections out here and on all of them, now that they're marked. And you can mark these off just so that you know where you're going to be cutting. Okay, when you do cut your lines, make sure and cut on the outside of your mark line so that you have room to sand and to make adjustments if you mess up. So I have a line here. I'm going to run my cut just on the very outside edge of that cut. It's the waist side of the cut. So I'm going to go ahead and make those cuts on both these and my Schedule 40. You can see these are just going to be a lot thicker, a lot beefier blade. Kind of a little test for myself too, but I wanted to show you both versions as we went through this. So let's make some cuts and I'll come back. Alright, we're back. That was an awful mess. I've got these cut now. As you can see, they are starting to look a whole bunch like a windmill blade. Just a note on tools, as I was cutting these sections, or cutting these pieces off, I did notice that my circular saw was quite a bit easier to use than the jigsaw. So just a note, jigsaw, I still did 2 of them with the jigsaw and I did 2 of them with the angle grinder. So just felt a little easier. I was a little more comfortable with the angle grinder. So you may want to try both. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and cut out the Schedule 40 pipe in the same manner. I'm going to shape them like this, and then we'll go on to checking all of them to make sure they're the same. So what I've done here is I've taken my new set of blades, started on the inside going toward the tip. I measured every 3 inches down on the trailing edge and made a mark. You'll end up with only 1 inch on the end. So I put my marks down there, then I took a square and I kept it along the trailing edge, and then I made a mark on the leading edge all the way down, as you can see. And I've done that on all 4 of my blades. Now remember, we're going to have 1 spare. This is kind of where that comes in handy. If you have 1 blade that's cut way wrong, or that's off completely, you can discard that blade and then just focus on the 3 that are the closest. So once you've made those marks, those 2 marks all the way down the trailing and then the leading edge, take a tape measure and measure from mark to mark and put that distance on the blade all the way down. And then lay the blades out like this and then compare. See this blade I have up here at the top? It's significantly larger than any of these other blades. So I've been off on my cuts, on my measuring, somewhere I've been off. I'm 2.5 inches on these two and 2 5/16 on this one. I'm at 3 inches on this one, 2 1/4 here. So it's consistently larger all the way down compared to these other 3. So more than likely I'll set this one to the side and really focus on getting these 3 properly cut and sanded. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look at these numbers and see where I need to take off some plastic, and I'm going to use an orbital sander to sand down the edges. On the trailing edge, it's okay to go ahead and make that pointed. As pointed as you can, it'll reduce drag. So go ahead and take your sander and make a nice pointed edge. I do all my edging once I've got my basic dimensions the same on all 3 blades. You don't want to make a nice edge and then realize you've got to take some off. So I go ahead and do all my sanding to get the blades the same size, and then I will go and take the sander and run it down the trailing edge, make a nice point. Now on the leading edge, you're going to want to make it nice and smooth, but you're not going to want to make it sharp, because that is the leading edge, and that's the cutting edge, like on a lawnmower. So if you get your hand in your windmill or something, you're not going to want that to be pointed. So go ahead and just round off the leading edges, round off the corners where we cut. The back corners especially can be rounded off. You can round off all those corners. You can smooth out the tip ends, but try to keep them as square as possible, because at high speeds it's going to help to have them square rather than pointed. So don't make a nice rounded edge. Try to keep the squares, the tip square. Just take off the sharpness on the corners, but other than that, leave it square. So I'm going to start working on all that. You can too. This is a bit tedious. It's not for everybody. It's a do-it-yourself project, and I have a lot of fun with it. And the more I do of them, the better I get at it. So just go ahead and start in on your measuring and your sanding, and I'll come back to you when I'm done with mine. Last time we talked about putting the marks down here, and then looking at all 3 of the blades with the marks, and determining which one was the best, which one was the smallest, because obviously you can't add more PVC to the blade. So when you're looking at all your numbers, if this one's at 3 inches and this one's at 3 3/8 and this one's at 3 1/4, you're going to need to go off of this one. So make sure that this one's at 3 inches and this one's at 3 inches, and you need to do that all the way down the blade. So I've done that. I also went over the entire surface with sandpaper with the orbital sander, just to scuff it up, because we're going to paint it, prime it and paint it afterwards. But this is what the finished blade looks like. I just knocked the sharp corners off the edge here on the tips, but I left it square. That's it. I hope this has been helpful, and please take a look around the website and see what else you can find. I'm actually not going to demonstrate that on the video because it's pretty self-explanatory, and it's 32 degrees here outside, so it's a bit too cold to be painting out here in the shop.